I'm glad Enda was quoting Barack Obama there during his speech, as he did very well, as opposed to quoting Donald Trump or... But anyway, as the saying goes, it is what it is. Okay, folks, while the Minister is just leaving us, and as I said, she has one or two other pressing engagements, of course, as ministers do, but we'd like to thank her for being with us here today. Just at this point, we have a couple of speakers, hopefully not too many, but very interesting speakers that I know you're going to enjoy. But right now, I'd ask you, please, if you would, to give a big welcome to author and actor Michael Harding, because Michael is going to give you a unique take on the men's sheds phenomenon. Thank you, Michael.
Thank you, Mike. How are you doing? You're on tablets. I was over there earlier at some of them stalls, and she says to me, I could take your blood pressure. I says, you will not. I wouldn't like her to know my blood pressure. What business of hers is it, what my blood pressure is? That used to be an attitude, you know, and it's not my attitude anymore, because I had a heart attack. And now I'm on the tablets. And I'm feeling much better. And I'm glad to be here. And I feel lucky to be here. Because, as I say, I had a heart attack in the Crown Plaza in Blanchardstown, which is beside the hospital in Blanchardstown. And as we say in Cavan, wasn't I lucky to have the heart attack in the Crown Plaza? I knew a fella in Cavan one time, this is true, he was in the amateur drama, we were doing the Hacklers, Tommy, I'm sure, know who I'm talking about, but we'll keep the name secret. But it was 3 o'clock in the morning in the Farnham Hotel in Cavan, you know, at a festival club, and, you know, the Carrigallen crowd had gone home singing, and we were still there drinking, and then this friend of mine, we'll call him Tom, he says, I'm off. And he went off, and, you know, it was a wet night. It was snow and drifts of snow coming down, and it was about -8. This is about 30, 40 years ago. But anyway, he went home at that hour of the morning with a tank full of drink on him, and he was like a man who used to drink professionally, you know. The day job was just the day job, but by Jesus, he was a drinker. And he went home, and he got about 3 miles out the road, and he wrapped himself around a tree. And he was there nearly dying until somebody came in the morning and found him. And he was in hospital. I met him about 6 months later, and he would have had wire in his jaw, and he had a tibia and fibia broken, and he had the hip smashed, and he was an appalling wreck. You just feel sorry for the poor man. And I said, how are you doing? Michael, he said, wasn't I the lucky man I had drink on me? Because his argument was, do you see, that he was lying in the car for about 4 or 5 hours in the snow in the -4 or 5 degrees, that if he didn't have the drink taken, he would have died. And that is a Cavan optimism, do you know what I mean? We look on the bright side of everything. But anyway, it's a privilege to be here, and it's a privilege to share with you. You growing up, like, I was probably uncomfortable being a man, in the sense that when I looked out at the world when I was in secondary school and I saw, let's say, footballers, and I saw what men did, I kind of knew that I wasn't one of them. Do you know what I mean? Because I wasn't good at football. I was good at, as they used to say, you're good at feck all, Harding. Do you know? I used to write poetry, which wasn't kind of encouraged in them days among the Cavan footballers of St. Pat's College. Do you know? But I used to say I survived adolescence. And then when I grew up, I realized that the one thing I had that saved me from anxiety or worry or depression was talking or telling jokes. And the funniest joke was telling a story of the most miserable thing that ever happened to you. I realized like that there's nothing as funny as misery, you know? Like you could be at a dinner table there chatting away and you might start talking about Brexit or Donald Trump or something. Nobody'd listen to you. And you would divide the room, you know, and the wife would be annoyed with you. You know, a corn-fed chicken roasted and good bottles of wine from Dunn's stores. Money put into it, hours put into it to entertain and impress the neighbours, and you have to fucking start talking about fucking Brexit. And annoying everybody. Do you know what I'm saying? And I learned that the best thing to do in life was tell people how miserable you were. So I'd be after I went through a bout of depression about 2011, and after that I became like, everybody loved me at the table. I'd be sitting there, they'd say, how are you? I'd say, I'm not too good, I'm on tablets. And the whole table would go silent and they'd start listening to me. Are you, Michael? What kind of tablets? Ah, well, I just suffer a little bit from the depression. Well, they'd be leaning over the table, lovely young women leaning over the table and wanting to hold your hand. God, I didn't know that, Michael, now. I never knew you were suffering like that. Ah, you were a hero. And what I was discovering was that men talking is powerfully therapeutic. And I say that to you because I bear witness to it in my own life. I mean, I have made a career out of being miserable. Do you know? It's great. And like, I know they say, by the way, I know they say that, well, the reason is like men don't talk. You know, men don't talk, women talk, men don't. That's horse manure. That is not true. You know as well as I do that when men get together on their own, you couldn't stop them talking and bitching and gossiping. Cavan men, of course, are the worst at it. I know there's people here from Leitrim, but I'll say this now with real respect because I love Leitrim, live in Leitrim 30, 40 years nearly, but anyway, they don't talk much. Oh, Jesus, they became... I have neighbours now in Arigna, and I'm 35, I'm there since 93, I can't count it, but I think that's... Is it 40 years? 30 years. I've these neighbours in Arigna, the boys, you know, and I'm up and down that drive for them years, and they'd salute you. It's not even the full hand, you know. I'd say that consider that over-emotional. You know? Just the finger, like. And not only that, but they make sure never to eyeball you, so they look away and do it. And so when it comes to conversation in Leitrim, I do find it difficult being from Cavan. We're compulsive talkers, do you know? But years ago when there was the big collapse, you know, when we all lost money with AIB, the crash, all that kind of crack, and there was NAMA. I remember being in a certain hotel, I won't say where. This is being recorded. Anyway, I was in a certain hotel in Connacht one time. It was in Connacht. And I was in the sauna. And I says to this fella beside me, is this hotel in Nama? And he said, I don't know. Now, I was in Cavan around the same time. And I met this fella, he's from Cavan. There's the same, like, anyway, I met this fella. We were in a hotel. He's a stranger to me. I says to him, the same question. You know, what do you do in the sauna when you're sitting there naked with other men? And one woman on the bench below you? You try and have some fucking conversation. So says I again, is this hotel in Nama? Listen, he says, Michael, not only is it an Nama, but the wife is driving around in a white Mercedes. And that to me is the level at which men talk. You know what I mean? They nailed the truth so beautifully. I says to a fella this morning from Monaghan, and he's in there somewhere in the crowd. I says to him, how are you doing? Not great, he says, I'm hanging together like a loose button on an owl shirt. He didn't know I was going to quote him. He was just talking off the top of his head. Do you know what I mean? But there is a natural facility in people to talk, and to talk in beautiful metaphors, beautiful poetry. And we do it all the time. And in fact, sometimes we actually talk purely for the pleasure of talking, purely for the pleasure of it, which is amazing. And I learned that men do that. I learned that men do it hugely when they're working together. Again, I won't say his name, but there's a great plumber near Giva in Roscommon, and he's coming for decades to our house to fix anything to do with the central heating or to do with this, that, or the other. Well, I love to see him coming. I put away a couple of hours of the afternoon because he'll come and he'll sit in the kitchen and he'll just open up about whatever's going on over in Giva. He'll tell you all the gossip of his world, and he'll tell you about weddings he was at and what his niece was wearing and who had an argument. Conversation makes work happen. It's amazing. And we don't even notice we're doing it. Now, you only notice this when you stop talking. When you stop talking. And I stopped talking, funny enough, probably around 2005. And the reason was probably because I was working very hard and I was writing a lot and doing a lot of stuff. And I talked all the time up till then, and then I stopped talking. And after about 6 or 7 years, I realized I'm depressed. I'm not well. And I went to therapy, and therapy was very, very helpful. And I talked to my family, and my family were a huge support. They were always around me, supporting me, and they always said, you will pull out of it. You'll get out of this. But the one thing that got me out of it really was I started talking again. It took about 3 years. I started talking. And I had a lovely neighbour. We had this beautiful neighbour. He was a man who lived on his own. He was a younger man than me. And he loved his animals and he loved his farm. And he used to go up and down the road behind his cattle. And you know the way he wouldn't be hunting the cattle. He'd just have the arm out of he had a Volkswagen Vectra, and he'd just have the arm out of it and he'd be tapping the outside of the door quietly, real gently behind the cattle. And that'd just be enough to move them without stressing them. Do you know what I mean? And he would do that with patience. And you'd see him fathering, he'd have a big bale of hay in the back of the Vectra of a Christmas morning to make sure them cattle were never hungry. He was a mighty man. And you'd see him when he had cut the fields in the summer. Sometimes I'd see him, he'd be on the ridge of the hill, and he'd be standing there having a cigarette because he would have been maybe in the tractor the whole day. And he'd stand there and you'd see the blue smoke rising above his head and him alone. And you could see how happy and proud he was of his fields and his cattle and his life. But he wasn't talking. And we buried him in Arigna, and a load of his neighbours carried his coffin in silence up the hill from the church to the beautiful graveyard in Arigna. And there was a lot of people felt regret that we hadn't talked to him, or that he hadn't reached out and talked. It was as simple as that. He wasn't talking. So this thing of talking is so powerful, and men do it so well, and men do it when they work. And whoever was the genius to put together all that and create the men's sheds did a wonderful thing, not just for you men, not just for me, but for wider society. And I'll tell you why, and then I'll go. If I go to a funeral in Arigna, or if I go to a funeral in Donegal, in Ranafast, I will see wake on the side of the road. I'll see Farah in Donegal, the Irish word for wake. And I'll see black and white bollards sometimes. And I do say to myself, Jesus, who could invent black and white bollards, do you know? But there's a funeral. And no matter how hard it is to access that house, so that every single person will be able to access it, you'll find stewards on the road. You'll find men in high vis with lamps at the side of a field, getting traffic in and out and all the rest of it. And that's one of 100 examples of where men functioning, not in jobs, but in community, men functioning and making things and organising things and just being there for young people, vulnerable people, everybody. So that when you do this good thing with the sheds, which is talking together and welcoming each other and being with each other, you're not just doing it for yourself. You're doing it in a way that's enriching the community, enriching this island. And that's why it's a huge honour to be with you today. Thank you.